I'm John from A&E Construction and you're watching Build with A&E. Today I'm going to talk you through the process of dabbing. Prime the wall, as you can see. A lot of people use a PVA, but we like to use an aggregate based primer. Basically it soaks into the brickwork a lot better, gives you a much better key with the aggregate in there. So it's just basically what we use. You know, everybody is different. You can also use different things for different applications, but we think this is the best sort of product to use. There's many different ones out there on the market, so just check with your local builder's merchant and see what's available and what'll be good for you. As we do in a bathroom, we're using the green board, which is moisture resistant board. Make sure that no water can penetrate through. It's a lot more mold resistant, a lot better to use in bathrooms, kitchen areas and stuff like that. As you can see, I've got the white marks on the wall because I've already pre-cut the wall, so it's a lot easier and quicker when we're dabbing. Dab's mixed up and ready to go. I had to mark on the floor this chalk line, which you can see over there. Quite a bit of difference in the wall behind it, and as we're doing the bathroom and the floor's being tiled, we need to make sure that the tiles run straight so the room's square. So that's why I've done this line across there, just to make sure. So I can dab, when I'm dabbing my boards, I can dab to that and then make sure then that it's perfectly square everywhere. As I mentioned before, I've pre-marked the walls and I've also put a string line across the floor so we know exactly where we're going with the board, how to keep the room nice and square. Because obviously this will define how square your room is. I've already looked at the wall, which is also an important thing to do, just to see how level it is. And we know that the bottom's got to come out slightly overall. See there's a bit of a difference there in the wall. Yeah, so we need to reflect that with our dabs. Apply your dab along the edge of the board. Like I said, I know that's where the edge of my board is, so we have a solid beader dab all the way down, just like this, making sure each dab touches each other. So you've got one continuous bead all the way across the edge of the board. As I mentioned, the wall's slightly running out, so as I get down towards the bottom, well, across the whole length of the board really, we need to be making sure the dabs are getting thicker. We've got to maintain the plumb of the wall, but also we've got to get out to this line, which does mean we're going to have to use quite a bit of dab, unfortunately, but that's just what you've got to do. Like I mentioned before as well, we're using the green boards, the moisture resistant boards, because it's a bathroom. There are loads of different sorts of boards for loads of different applications, but this is what you need to be using when you're doing a bathroom. Just to make sure there's never any issues with any water penetration or anything like that. Right, when you get to the bottom, again, well, in this bathroom they're going to have a tied up stand, so it doesn't really matter as much, but especially if you're doing bedrooms and stuff like that, you need somewhere to be able to fix your skirting. So, solid bead all the way across the bottom. This also helps with maintaining the air tightness of the room. Also any issues if there's ever a fire or anything like that, it stops any fire coming up through the floor. Load your hort back up. Carry on with your dabs. See the chalk line across there? Got to make sure that they come right out with these dabs. So when we stick our board on, it's going to come out to that. Might need to beef these up a bit more, just to make sure that we get out where we need to be. It's also worth re-mentioning as well about the bonding agent that we use on the walls. Like I mentioned, a lot of people use PVA, it's a cheaper alternative. It's been used for years, so nothing against it at all. You know, it's not going to fail, it is what it is. But we always prefer to use bonding agent with an aggregate in, when skimming or when dabbing. Always gives a much better key. And with this sort of stuff, it actually soaks into the substrate as well. So it gives you a much better key over time. You can find with PVA, occasionally it can actually just peel straight off the wall. So it's always better to use something that soaks into the wall rather than sits on top of it. So same as we did on that side. Dabs are getting bigger. Try and maintain the plumb of the wall. Make it easier as well when you're actually flattening the board out. Get me steps. That one bucket there is probably about a bag of dab. Different people do it different ways. If you mix it up on your own, better to do a big bucket. You haven't got to keep stopping and starting then. Normally 1 bag of dab will probably do about 2 boards, to be honest, but obviously because we're going to go on quite thick with this, it's not going as far as we'd like it to. There we go, another solid bead across the top as well, so as you can see we've perfectly framed the board round. Make sure you do this around all of your boards, all the time. 4 beads all the way around. A lot of people just will go dab, 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 every 300 or 400 or something like that. The problem you've got there is cracking. If you haven't got a solid bead around the edge of your board, the board's going to crack. The skin will crack, and that's it. Once it's cracked, it's cracked. If you've got movement in the board, there's nothing you can do about it. So, always best to keep your dabs solid all the way around the perimeter of the board. Again with these dabs, getting bigger as they're going down the wall. Oh, that's a bit wet. What we're going to have to do is just add a little bit more dab into this because it's got near the bottom of the bucket. That's a big bucket. It tends not to mix as well towards the bottom. Because dab's quite thick, it's quite difficult to mix it through the whole bucket. So we're just going to have a little bit more dab in here, a little bit more powder. You need the dab to be fairly thick just to make sure that it's actually got the thick on it, it doesn't just sag down the wall. Just mixes in by hand. There we go, just like that. If you're interested in seeing a video on how to mix up any plaster, dab, bonding, skim, anything like that, just leave some comments in the box below and we'll see if we get enough interest, we'll make a video about that as well. Okay, plenty of dabs through the middle. It's not as critical to get a full solid bead all the way at the middle of the board because obviously you've got no joint, so you're not going to get any crack in there whatsoever, it's just all around the edges. Put packers underneath just to keep it off the floor as you would in any room. That way if there's any movement in the floor at all, it doesn't transfer at the board, it doesn't cause any cracking. If your floor moves and your board sat directly onto it, all that's going to happen is it's going to push the board and it's going to cause a crack straight at the joint of the board. So always make sure you put a packer in. Once you've dabbed the wall and it's gone off, you can take the packer out and you maintain a solid gap all the way across. Right, many different plasterers have many different techniques about doing this. My favourite way is to use a level and a rubber mallet. That way then, you know you're going to be level at all times. Some people use a feather edge, whack the board in so it's nice and flat, but then you've got to get a level on it as well. You might already be too late, you might have made it out of plumb, so then you've got to whack it back even further, cause damage to the board and your ears. This way you can just give it a nice tap. Don't maintain that line on the bottom. You see that line up here, you know where we need to be. Alright, if we look at the level, we know we need to take the bottom of the board in slightly. Just need to give it a quick lift, just so it pulls in, because what can happen is obviously with the weight of the board pushing down into this packer, it can make it difficult to push the bottom of the board in. So just a gentle nudge, gentle lift up, and it will naturally pull itself in anyway. Okay, we're getting somewhere near now. There we go, there's the line appearing there. The blue line that we've got to make sure it's square. Alright, nearly at the line. And we're nearly level. Hold your level all the way across, different angles. See there's no gap here, nothing at all. That's what you're looking for. That makes sure then that your board is completely flat all the way across. Level there, level there. Bit of a tap in there. Check across this way. We're all good. Check we're plumb. We're plumb. There you go. That's how you'd have a wall.